the official story just fell apart. On March 2nd, after weeks in hiding, Tommaso Cioni surfaced, flanked by Annie and Savannah Guthrie at the memorial outside NY's home. Instantly, online sleuths were analyzing his walk, his height against Savannah's, meticulously comparing every frame. And while that firestorm rages, something far more sinister was overlooked. We'll return to Cioni, but this changes everything. Then, on March 6th, federal agents and Puma County detectives descended on NY's neighborhood, knocking on every door. They weren't looking for strange cars or unknown figures. They were asking about Wi-Fi. Specifically, if anyone's internet connection faltered the night Nancy Guthrie vanished. And their discovery shatters the entire profile of the person responsible for this. Multiple homeowners in the Catalina foothills confirmed to NBC News that agents said several people in the area had experienced internet glitches on February 1st. News Nation's Brian Enton also reported that one neighbor, whose property adjoins NY's, discovered his Ring camera footage for that exact night was simply gone. Not corrupted, not erased, just unavailable. Something that had never happened before. But this is the chilling detail. It wasn't every camera on the property that failed. Only the cameras facing NY's home went dark. The cameras on the other side of that same house worked perfectly all night. One router, one network, one power source. Yet only the cameras with a direct line of sight to NY's property went dead. That's not a random outage. It's not a coincidence. It's deliberate. To understand how, you must know that the term Wi-Fi jammer is misleading. Most people picture the wrong device. And that difference is crucial. It's the difference between a sledgehammer and a surgeon's scalpel. A conventional Wi-Fi jammer is a brute force tool. It blasts radio frequencies, the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz bands your router uses with overwhelming static. Imagine someone screaming in a library. All communication stops. Every device in range is deafened. Your phone, cameras, thermostat, even a pacemaker's Bluetooth link, everything goes silent. Its effective range is just a matter of power. Even a cheap one, for $30 to $50, can disable signals within 10 to 30 yards. But that's not what took place at NY's house. Because her Nest camera kept recording. The FBI has images of the suspect. A brute force attack would have blinded that camera long before the suspect even got to the door. And critically, NY's pacemaker stayed connected via Bluetooth to her devices until 2:28 a.m., a full 41 minutes after the camera was destroyed. A standard jammer would have severed that link instantly. Retired FBI agent Jennifer Coffender was the first to publicly point out this discrepancy. She stated the disruption wasn't a total jammer, since it spared the Nest camera and the pacemaker's data. She argued it suggests a much more sophisticated attack. So what was it? It's a device most have never even heard of. It doesn't work by flooding the area with static. Instead, it sends something called deauthentication packets. These are targeted commands, disguised as legitimate signals, that tell a specific device to disconnect from the network. The router gets the command and thinks it's from the device. The device gets the command and thinks it's from the router. Both ends are tricked into dropping the connection. The effect is the same. The camera goes dark, but the method is surgical, not a demolition. This kind of attack can be aimed at a single device, on one network, from a precise direction. It doesn't cause a blackout. It only disables what it's pointed at. And that explains it perfectly. Why cameras facing NY's home failed, while others on the same network worked fine. Different directions, different targets. Let me paint a clearer picture. It's 2 in the morning. You're in the desert, standing between two houses. In your pocket is a device the size of a smartphone. You aim it at the neighbor's house. It scans for every camera on that Wi-Fi network and sends disconnect orders only to the ones in its path, the ones facing you. The cameras on the far side, physically shielded by the house, never even get the command. They stay online. You've just engineered a perfect blind spot in the neighborhood security net without touching a camera or cutting a wire, without leaving a trace. And the owner won't know until morning, when they find 2 words where the footage should be not available. This isn't just a theory. Deauthentication tools are sold everywhere, small enough for a pocket, and some even run on a phone. They cost under $50, and since their commands mimic normal traffic, they leave no forensic trail. A former deputy confirmed you can buy these online for less than $30. Now, look again at the FBI footage. On the porch, the suspect has a strange object in his pocket. An antenna sticks out a shape that clearly isn't a cell phone. Former FBI agent Tracy Walder flagged this, speculating it was a walkie-talkie or a signal jammer. A walkie-talkie means he was coordinating in real time with an accomplice, someone in a car. Someone posted as a lookout. Someone getting live updates, confirming a two-person team and a second device to trace. But a DOTH tool means he was waging targeted electronic warfare while committing a kidnapping. That level of technical skill doesn't match the cheap backpack, the improperly worn holster, or the $70 kit. You don't use sophisticated signal jammers if you can't even put on your own equipment correctly. One of these two profiles is the real perpetrator. The other is a disguise. Jammer or radio, the $20 backpack theory completely falls apart. There's also a legal angle to this that has been completely ignored. The Federal Communications Commission bans the operation or marketing of these jammers. Selling any device designed to interfere with radio signals is a federal crime, with massive fines and prison time. This means the FBI has more than just a kidnapping case on their hands. They have a separate federal charge that unleashes its own powerful investigative tools. They can pull purchase records, shipping addresses, search histories, and browsing data. If he bought it online, the transaction is logged on a server. If it was shipped, the address is in a database. If he searched how to jam Ring cameras before February 1st, that data exists. The device itself also has a distinct operational footprint. Right now, the FBI is building a map of every camera that went down and every one that stayed online. When finished, that map will show the device's exact coverage area, its radius, and its direction. That footprint becomes a location, telling agents exactly where the device was when it was activated. If it was in his pocket on her porch, the blast radius centers on her property. If it was in a parked car, the signal originates from the street. If it was planted, the map will pinpoint that location. Every scenario refines the geometry of the crime, and that geometry closes in on the suspect. Now, connect this to the vehicle footage. A camera 2.5 miles away recorded a vehicle at 2:36 a.m. Her pacemaker signal was lost at 2:28. That's a 6-minute drive. The sheriff says the timeline works, and that camera was operational, but the cameras right next to her house were not. If the device was in his pocket, its range was localized. As soon as he drove away, cameras beyond that limited radius would have been unaffected. This is exactly what the digital evidence trail shows. Cameras near her home went dark. A camera miles away captured the escape. The device's range was finite. It was precise, and that precision signals a level of planning and technical knowledge no random criminal possesses. Eric Maldonado served 29 years with the sheriff's office, working burglaries in her exact neighborhood. In an interview, he outlined 3 distinct methods of signal disruption. You have cell phone jammers, Wi-Fi jammers, and tools that trick a system into thinking services out. He confirmed this technology is cheap, some for under $30 and available to anyone. But then Maldonado offered a chilling possibility that has stuck with me. He said the attacker might not live near the neighborhood, but in it. His logic comes from 3 decades of experience. He's worked cases in that area where the suspects lived on the very same street as their victims. He noted the flawed assumption that killers travel. In his experience, the opposite is true. They often target homes they see daily, the reconnaissance complete. Routines are memorized, cars are recognized, cameras are already located or noted for their absence. What takes an outsider weeks to learn, a neighbor simply soaks in, effortlessly. If the suspect is local, their phone's signal blends right in with the cell tower data. It belongs. No geofence flag is raised, because the device is precisely where it should be. Investigators search for the outlier, the device that does not fit. They would never find the phone that first appeared on February 1st, because it was already there every day. But then Maldonado offered a chilling theory for why they took her body, and it has haunted me ever since. He said, Nancy Times was times the crime scene. Her body held the evidence. DNA under her nails, on her clothes, on her skin, and the killer knew it. It is common knowledge. Every criminal understands DNA is the one thing that will seal their fate. Pills on the counter, wallet untouched. Nothing was taken, because the goal was never theft. The one thing that could definitively identify the killer was Nancy herself, so they took her. This explains a key mystery. 5 weeks in, with massive cell dumps and the FBI's top analysts, there is nothing. Phone data has yielded no suspect. Usually, cell tower data points to a suspect within days in cases like this. A phone at the test house on January 23rd and Nancy's on February 1st should be a beacon, unless it is a local's. Now, connect that idea to the deauthentication attack. The attacker knew exactly which cameras to blind. Not every camera, only those aimed at Nancy's house. That implies knowing precisely where they were pointed. It requires understanding the line of sight from the neighbor's property to hers. This means knowing the layout of multiple homes, the entire street's surveillance network, not just the target. A stranger would not have that kind of intimate knowledge on their first visit. A stranger does not know the camera angles or their specific fields of view. They do not know the blind spots. That level of detail comes from spending time there, from routine. It is absorbed by walking those streets, noticing cameras subconsciously, like traffic lights on a daily commute. Consider the facts. The suspect on January 23rd, the backward walker, tested a Ring camera's response to a reverse approach just 6.5 meters from Nancy's home. He chose a spot in the same area, subject to identical dark sky ordinances. It had the same isolated homes, the same long driveways. This was not random. It was a simulation. A barking dog made him flee. Yet he kept walking backward, choosing to risk a fall over showing his face to the camera. That is not panic, that is discipline. It is someone who has studied these systems. 9 days later, February 1st, the same figure, or someone with that same Ozark Trail backpack, approached Nancy's porch. This time, though, he was not walking backward. He was composed. 2 taps on the camera, while the neighbors were already dark. The January 23rd test taught him the camera's behavior. The February 1st attack revealed he knew which cameras to kill beforehand. That pattern test, learn, execute is not a stranger's method. It is the mark of someone perfecting their plan in a familiar territory. But there is another digital trail here, one that has been largely overlooked. Clear's throat. A digital analyst from the Brian Kauberger case raised a possibility. If the killer's Wi-Fi was on, Nancy's router might have logged it. Smartphones constantly send these probe requests, broadcasting names of familiar networks as they search for a connection. If the suspect's phone was nearby with Wi-Fi active, her router logs could hold a record of it searching for its own home network. That network's name could potentially reveal the suspect's location, their provider, or even who they are. That data, if it was ever there. The key to this case sits inside NY's router, now in FBI hands, where digital logs give answers in hours, not months. Any device that came near NY's network on the night of February 1st could have left a digital trace. Not DNA, but something just as telling, a MAC address, a device ID, a digital breadcrumb trail of networks showing where a suspect's phone lives and where it has been. If the killer was slick enough to blind the cameras, did they think to silence their phone's Wi-Fi? Did they bother to switch on airplane mode? Or did they leave it home? That's the paradox of trying to cover your tracks. The more sophisticated the methods, the more sophisticated the evidence left behind. A signal jammer has a purchase record. A deauthentication tool has a creator. Activating airplane mode leaves a timestamp. A gap in the data can be as loud as the data itself. A phone signal vanishing at 1:47 a.m. from a place it always is isn't being stealthy. It's a spotlight. The dog is also a factor, and that detail is crucial. This one is too specific to ignore. The neighbor whose cameras died told Brian Anton their dog woke them at the exact time all this went down. The dog, who normally sleeps all night, insisted on going outside, which was unheard of. On this night, at that hour, it woke the house, demanding to be let out. Once outside, it stared toward NY's home. It wasn't barking at wildlife in the distance. It was looking at NY's property. Just as the cameras pointed that way went dark. Maldonado confirmed this. He said dogs are still the best security system because they hear frequencies we can't. Maybe the dog heard the high-pitched whine of an electronic device. Or maybe it heard footsteps in the desert, or just sensed a presence the cameras could no longer see. It reacted to something real, as the technology was defeated. That is not a coincidence. It's a data point from the oldest surveillance system on the planet. A dog heard what the cameras could not. Now look at the whole picture. Someone used a device to knock out only the cameras aimed at her house. That person knew exactly which cameras to hit and where they were aimed. They worked in a neighborhood where the houses are far apart. A place where any unfamiliar car would be reported before sunrise. They left no anomalies on the cell towers, despite FBI data dumps. They moved through the house in the dark for 41 minutes. They left behind the medicine needed to keep their captive alive. And they took the single piece of evidence that carried their DNA, Nancy herself. Everything about this case points in one direction, and it's not toward a stranger or a random attack. It points to someone who knew the roads, the cameras, the house layout, and NY's schedule. Someone who had been there so often that their phone and their car were part of the scenery. Their presence wouldn't seem strange to anyone, or anything, monitoring the area. The investigation isn't cooling off, it's focusing. This week, a task force was created, 4 detectives and a sergeant, working full-time from an FBI office. That isn't how you handle a cold case. That's how you prepare for a trial. You don't move local law enforcement into a federal building to chase old leads. You do it when you're building a prosecution, and you need all eyes on the same evidence at once. Savannah Guthrie appeared on the Today Show, planning to return, but she also said the family accepts that Nancy might not be alive. What they refuse to accept is never knowing her location. The FBI is asking the right questions now. They're going door to door, asking about Wi-Fi drops and Ring camera outages. They are creating a precise map of which devices failed, at what time, and from which direction. When finished, that map will reveal the footprint of the device they used. Its range is a location, and that location is exactly where the suspects stood when they began their attack. The memorial on March 2nd, that's when a ghost reappeared. Tommaso Cioni surfaced, walking with Savannah and Annie to Nancy's home. For a month, he'd been a phantom. The rest of the Guthrie family had been front and center in the media. Savannah shared heart-wrenching videos. She put up a $1 million reward, pleading on camera. Every hour has been agony. Cameron appealed directly to the abductor. Annie gave investigators her full cooperation. Tommaso did nothing publicly. No statements were released. No video appearances made. He wasn't even beside his wife as she begged for her mother's life. Reporter Brian Anton even told Megyn Kelly that the highly recognizable bearded Tommaso had simply vanished for a week. Then, on March 2nd, he emerged, arm in arm with family, heading to the memorial. And online investigators immediately zeroed in on 2 things. First, his height. Savannah Guthrie is reportedly 5'10". The FBI suspect was listed between 5'9" and 5'10". Pundits claimed Tommaso was too tall, at least 6 feet. But the memorial footage shows him standing nearly eye to eye with Savannah, not towering over her. His exact height is unconfirmed, but that footage put him firmly in the FBI's range, a detail previously dismissed by everyone. The very fact meant to exonerate him now made him a possibility. The second detail? His walk. Within hours, side-by-side videos appeared, comparing the memorial walk to the porch footage, analyzing the gait, the shoulder sway, the stride. Forensic gait analysis is a legitimate science, used in UK courts as an emerging tool for identification. But what the internet did wasn't forensics, it was mass-scale pattern recognition. Millions of viewers watched the same clips, and they all got the same chilling feeling. I won't tell you what it proves. A side-by-side on a phone screen is not courtroom evidence. But I will tell you this. The person who blinded the cameras facing Nancy's home knew that neighborhood, and all its angles, intimately. They knew which sightlines mattered, and understood the street's geometry enough to target specific cameras on specific houses. And Tommaso Cioni has been driving those same streets, walking past those same houses, visiting that neighborhood weekly for 2 decades. That's not an accusation. It's the question the evidence keeps posing. The questions about his height, the gait comparisons, and the signal jamming all point toward an insider, someone who didn't need to scout the area because they were already in it. The technology designed to protect Nancy ultimately failed her, but the tech the suspect used will be their undoing. Every device leaves a digital trail, and the FBI is hunting for it. Comment below and tell me what was in the suspect's pocket, a walkie-talkie, a deauthentication device, or something else. Because that answer determines if this was a team with live comms or a solo operator using electronic countermeasures. Either way, the answer points to someone far more capable and familiar with the neighborhood than the cheap backpack and mismatched holster were designed to make you think. I've been on this case since day one, and every video in this series has pulled back another layer. The backward walker, the 41 minutes, the 2 DNA profiles, the sheriff's contradictions, and now the signal disruption. Each layer reveals meticulous planning and knowledge, incompatible with a random, impulsive stranger. The next video pulls on this new thread, because the question isn't just who was on the porch. It's who knew enough about the neighborhood to create a blackout before the operation began. And the answer to that will shrink the suspect pool to a very small number of people. Someone in Tucson holds the answer. The disappearance of Nancy Guthrie has evolved into a chilling masterclass on the duality of the modern world, where sophisticated technology can be used as a weapon, yet the human spirit remains an unbreakable beacon of hope. This case teaches us that the smart systems we rely on for safety, our Ring cameras and Nest devices, are not invincible. The targeted deauthentication attack that blinded specific neighborhood cameras wasn't just a technical glitch, it was a surgical strike, executed by someone who knew the geometry of that street intimately. It warns us that a predator may not be a wandering stranger, but someone who has soaked in our routines and sightlines for decades. Yet, even in the face of such calculated darkness, the truth finds its own way to surface. Whether it is the digital breadcrumbs hidden in a router's logs, or a neighbor's dog sensing a presence that technology could no longer see, the universe refuses to stay silent. The lesson for us all is one of unwavering vigilance and the power of collective conscience. As Savannah Guthrie pleads for the return of a mother who is now the crime scene herself, we are reminded that justice is built frame by painstaking frame. Let this story be a call to look closer at the familiar, to protect the vulnerable, and to remember that while a jammer can kill a signal, it can never silence the demand for the truth.